Have you ever felt like your life was slipping away from you, no matter how hard you tried to fix it? This is the story of Sofia, a woman who discovered an old, mysterious book, one that claimed to hold the secret to change. She didn't believe it at first, but what she found inside would transform everything she thought she knew about her life, her dreams, and herself. What was the secret? And could it work for you too? Let's find out. Before we begin, take a moment for yourself. Find a quiet and comfortable space where you can truly relax. Maybe curl up with a warm drink or simply close the door to the outside noise. If you have earbuds or headphones, put them on. They'll help you feel every moment of this story. And as you listen, if Sofia's journey speaks to you, if you feel her struggles or see pieces of yourself in her story, let us know in the comments. Your voice matters, and sharing your thoughts could inspire someone else. This is your time. Let's dive in. Sofia's story begins with silence, the kind of silence that fills a space once alive with joy. Her restaurant, her pride and dream, had become a hollow shell of what it once was. 5 years ago, the place had been vibrant, filled with laughter and the aromas of her carefully crafted dishes. But now, empty tables, dusty corners, a stack of unpaid bills staring back at her every day. She sat in the kitchen one night, long after closing, her head in her hands. The thought of letting go crossed her mind again. Maybe it was time to give up. She had tried everything, discounts, new menus, even free events, but nothing worked. The people just didn't come back. In her frustration, she got up and started rummaging through an old storage cabinet, looking for she wasn't even sure what. Something useful? Something to sell? Instead, her fingers brushed against an object she didn't recognize. It was a book, small, worn, and covered in dust. Curiosity won over exhaustion, and she flipped it open. At first, she thought it was a cookbook, but the titles of the recipes were strange. A recipe for kindness. The ingredients for patience. How to season with forgiveness. She frowned, wondering if someone had slipped it into the cabinet as a joke. Then she noticed a note on the inside cover. What we fear doing most is usually what we most need to do. She closed the book quickly, almost annoyed. What does this even mean? She muttered to herself. But later that night, as she lay awake, the words stayed with her. Change. It was what she wanted more than anything. The next day, she opened the book again and decided to try the first recipe, a recipe for kindness. The instructions were unusual. They said to make something simple, something comforting, and give it away to strangers with no expectations. Sofia hesitated. How could this possibly help her failing business? Still, she decided to try. She made a large pot of soup, packed it into containers, and took it to a park near her restaurant. At first, she felt ridiculous standing there, offering free soup to passers-by. Most people ignored her. But then, a man stopped. His clothes were worn, his face tired, but his smile when she handed him the food, it was genuine. One by one, more people came, each with their own quiet thank yous. When Sofia returned home that evening, something had shifted inside her. She couldn't explain it, but she felt lighter, as if the act of giving had cleared away some of the weight she'd been carrying. She turned the page in the book. The next recipe said, "Let go of what weighs you down." This one wasn't about food. It was about clutter, both physical and emotional. Sofia looked around her restaurant with new eyes. The storeroom was packed with broken appliances, faded decorations, and memories of a busier time. She hesitated, then began clearing it all out. The process was slow, painful even. Every item she threw away felt like saying goodbye to a part of her dream. But with each empty shelf, she felt a sense of relief. The space looked brighter, cleaner, and more inviting. For the first time in months, a few customers trickled in. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give her hope. She began trying more recipes from the book. One called for forgiving someone who had hurt her. She thought of an old friend she hadn't spoken to in years, a former business partner whose betrayal still stung. The recipe's steps were clear: write a letter, express your feelings, and let go of the resentment. Writing that letter was one of the hardest things Sofia had ever done. But as she sealed the envelope, she felt as though she had finally released a burden she'd carried for too long. Each recipe brought a new lesson: kindness, courage, forgiveness, patience. But it wasn't always easy. One day, everything went wrong. She burned an important dish for a food critic, and a burst pipe flooded her kitchen just hours before opening. Sitting on the kitchen floor, soaked and exhausted, she felt like quitting again. But the next recipe whispered in her mind, failure is just another ingredient. She got up, fixed the pipe, and salvaged what she could. Slowly, step by step, things began to change. The restaurant started to fill up again. Customers returned, not just for the food, but for the warmth Sofia now brought to every interaction. One night, as she flipped through the book, she noticed something strange. The final page was blank. At the top, it said simply, "Write your own recipe." It was then that she understood. The book had never been about saving her restaurant. It had been about saving herself. The recipes weren't instructions, they were reminders. Reminders that the secret to change wasn't in her kitchen or her business. It was in her actions, her mindset, and her willingness to grow. Sofia picked up a pen and began writing. Her first recipe read, "Stay curious." The next, "Celebrate small wins." And another, "Share your gifts." She realized change wasn't something you waited for. It was something you created, one small step at a time. And so, her story became a recipe of its own, a recipe for anyone ready to transform their life, starting with the simplest of steps. Sofia's journey reminds us that change isn't something we wait for, it's something we create. Her story began with a single, unexpected step, and yours can too. The challenges we face aren't there to break us, they're there to shape us. So, the question is, what will your first step be? If this story inspired you or made you think, don't keep it to yourself, share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And remember, the recipe for change is already within you. You just have to start. If Sofia's story touched your heart or sparked something within you, there's more to come. Stories like these are reminders that we're all connected, that through shared experiences, we find strength, hope, and new beginnings. So, if you want to hear more stories that inspire, uplift, and maybe even guide you toward your own transformation, don't forget to subscribe. By subscribing, you become part of a community that believes in the power of change, one small step at a time. And remember, your next story might just be the one that changes everything.